Gerald Griggs of Justicefighter here live on Power 92.3 Atlanta for Justicefighter Radio. And this is an honor to be here, third show. And I could think of no better guest to have on my third show than two of the most preeminent women activists, organizers, and my best friends to have on the show. Janel Green from the Georgia Alliance for Social Justice, and Kenyette Barnes, of course, from the Georgia Alliance for Social Justice, and one of the creators of the Mute R. Kelly movement. Thank you, ladies, for joining me in the studio. What's going on, ladies? How you doing?
We're getting educated about radio. This is kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a great platform, great way to get the information out to the listeners, and also just a way to inform Atlanta of what's going on in social justice. So introduce yourself, Janel, and tell the people a little bit about you.
Good morning, I'm Janel Green. I'm the Executive Director of Georgia Alliance for Social Justice. I've spent a ridiculous amount of time with Kenyette and Gerald the last couple of days.
Quite ridiculous.
Or a couple of years, excuse me, not
days.
days.
Years.
It's been years.
It's been that bad.
Working to try to change the landscape here in Georgia.
And Kenyette?
Hey, well, I'm Kenyette Barnes, and as Gerald said, I'm part of the leadership of the Georgia Alliance for Social Justice. I'm also the co-founder of the Mute R. Kelly movement, so I'm really excited to be here.
And so one of the reasons why I want to have you ladies on is to kind of talk about our matriculation through social justice. A lot of people just think the marches and the protests just kind of pop up and it's just kind of a media event. But I want to kind of break down how we all met each other and how we have moved Georgia forward over the last 2 years and how we plan to continue to move Georgia forward over the next decade or so. So let's go back to the beginning. So basically, how I was introduced to Janel, I helped put together the Black Lives Matter March in July of 2016 and brought 15,000 individuals to the Center for Civil and Human Rights. And then I got a phone call from one of the directors of the center saying that there was going to be a march in January for the Women's March. And I was like, well, I've only put together like 1 or 2 protests and 1 or 2 marches. Why are you guys calling me? And they were like, well, there's some young ladies who want to put together a march and they want you to help. And so we got into a phone group, text group, and then ultimately we met, and that's where I met Janel. And we just kind of clicked from there and kind of pick up the story from there, Janel.
It was crazy because we were less experienced than you were, Gerald. We had never put together a large-scale event, and I think that when we started talking about it, we had no idea what it was going to grow into and what it was going to become. I think that we just tried to pull together as many people who were interested, had the time, energy, and willingness to do it, trying to find people who had expertise, bring together some of the old, some of the new, and see what we could do to move things forward. It was, when I think about back then and all that we didn't know and how much we know now about bringing people together and moving things forward, it just kind of blows my mind.
It's awesome. And then about a year into it, we met this ball of energy, this individual who is larger than life, this personality who will take on giants and truly drop them, Kenyette Barnes, and she lit an already burning inferno and made it burn even brighter. Kenyette, just kind of tell us how we all came together and the things we've done together.
Well, I think I kind of met you guys mid-year.
Do you remember when we first marched together?
Yes, it was the healthcare march, right? But I had been following you guys for a while I was sort of doing my own thing. So before really going full steam into the activist world here in Georgia, I worked as a registered lobbyist in the General Assembly, and so I sort of held down that domain in a very kind of discreet way because I noticed there were a lot of people who were on the ground, the activists, organizers, but there really wasn't a presence within the General Assembly. So you would have all of this energy, and then it was very difficult to translate that into actual legislation. So I worked as a lobbyist in Pennsylvania and in Virginia, so that was sort of my primary role here. But then I met you guys, and I'm like, wait a minute, these guys are pretty dope. I think I like them. So
you were skeptical at first.
I was a little skeptical. Well, I'm skeptical because I'm always skeptical of everything. And so as a rule, as a personality rule, I always say no before I say yes. Always. And so I was like, I couldn't give this a hard no. So I'm like, there's something about these people that I really like. So how I became really infused with Georgia Alliance for Social Justice is because I really like the idea of intersectionality. I really love that the leadership looked like the community. It wasn't all men, all white women, all one gender or race. It was a hodgepodge of everyone. And at that point, you guys were looking for someone with the legislative expertise. I was very interested, and then from there, it just kind of grew. So that was sort of the Georgia Alliance story. Now, as far as Meet R. Kelly, really quickly, that happened very organically. So I want to be clear, I've been muting R. Kelly since before Y2K. I mean, I was like anti-R. Kelly before there was a Mute R. Kelly, as many activists on the ground were. But when he was scheduled to come to Atlanta at the Wolf Creek Amphitheater, for me, that was the tipping point. And he had just been accused of holding these girls against their will, and it was a whole lot going on. So my plan was pretty crude. I was going to lobby the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, and then I was going to just show up and just bum rush the stage. And of course, that was not.
Wow.
So that probably would not have gone well, but that was the original plan, that I was going to buy a ticket and seriously just try to just get up on stage and just say, this is complete crap, and you need to just, end this. But in the midst of that, I met Oronike Odelier, my co-founder, and at the same time, she was petitioning Atlanta radio to stop playing the music. And so we had one conversation. We met for coffee. Over coffee, we decided, do you want to do this? And then that's where the movement was born. So if I could give anyone any piece of advice, if it is ordained by your passion, do it. That little conversation ended with 11 canceled concerts, 8 protests in 7 cities, and an estimated $1.7 million in lost revenue, a professional hit. He's no longer being outwardly promoted by Live Nation. Now it's all these sort of low budget promoters around the country. They're not advertising the way they used to. It kind of pops up, and then 2 weeks later in a local market, he performs. So we are muting R. Kelly, and more than that, it's less about him as a person. Well, it is about him as a person, but it's about really holding accountable powerful men who use that power and influence to really harm those who really don't have it. And that's really, we're really trying to hold truth to power. So that's kind of a long and the short of it, but activists around the country, I could shout out names all morning, but we were around town, out of time, so that's sort of me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of created Justicefighter Radio, is to give a platform to all of the exceptional organizers that are doing work on the ground. Because people tend to think that, the civil rights movement or social justice was something of the past. And there are activists doing the work right here in Atlanta and around the country that is having a global impact. I mean, the Mute R. Kelly movement is just awesome. I'm a part of it on the legal side a little bit, but I think that empowering women, especially African American and women of color, to take back their agency from individuals who have been predators on them for such a long time is an important thing. But I kind of want to talk about the movement here in Atlanta, the intersectional movement that we've helped to foster through the Georgia Alliance. I mean, we've had, and I've lost count at this point, 19 protests / marches / events. We are always at the forefront. We were at the state capitol for Count Every Vote, which, you know, turned into a movement of itself. And so,
Absolutely.
you know, we've had two of the biggest marches in Georgia history. One, the biggest march in Georgia history, and he helped facilitate the second biggest march in Georgia history with March for Our Lives. So, Janel, I just want to talk about what it entails, that type of leadership and that type of vision in a community like Atlanta that was known for, you know, activism in the past, but now, you know, re-energizing that. What does that mean to you, and how do we do that?
You know, when I before I started engaging in this work at this level, I didn't know you. I didn't know people who were on the ground. I've always worked in nonprofits and fighting for social justice professionally, but I hadn't been involved as a volunteer in leading things. I would see things on the news like the Black Lives Matter thing. And Mom and I would talk the next day. We'd be like,